The Carolina Panthers have until 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon to get from 80 to 53 men on their roster. Dreams will be broken. Not really. Some of these guys are probably going to end up on the practice squad anyways. Either way, I'm going to give you my 53-man roster projection right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to watch the show and subscribe to the show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. You can also check us out wherever you get your podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of Locked On Panthers. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, because every single Friday I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show. So either at me or DM me right now. Do not delay and get those questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag on Locked On Panthers. And today's episode of Locked On Panthers is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less in their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, the Carolina Panthers have until Tuesday at 4 p.m. to get down from 80 players to 53 players on their initial, and that is very key, initial 53-man roster for the 2022 season. I say that because some of the guys I'm going to project here on this podcast may make the roster on Tuesday, but does not mean that they will be there on Wednesday, Thursday, or really by next Monday when the Carolina Panthers shouldn't have their 53 men who are going into the 2022 season with and in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. So that's very important to understand. There's going to be names that are going to be named who we know are going to be on IR, like Sam Darnold. So understand, it is not the final roster. It is the initial 53-man roster. This is a very fluid situation. And as we've seen, the NFL season, guys get hurt. Guys get elevated from the practice squad. They go on IR. That's how it works. So these are the 53 based off of the 80 men right here in Carolina who I think will be on the roster. And let's go ahead and start on the offensive side of the ball, starting out with quarterbacks. I believe the Carolina Panthers, I think I did my math right, will have 3 quarterbacks on the roster: Baker Mayfield, PJ Walker, and Sam Darnold. Why is Sam Darnold still on the roster? Because Sam Darnold has to make the 53-man roster in order for the Carolina Panthers to put him on short-term IR so they can bring him back in 4 to 6 weeks. Matt Rule not willing to give any sort of a timeline, spoke to the media on Saturday and was asked about Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network in his report that Darnold would be out 4 to 6 weeks without high ankle sprain. That's the expectation. So he will miss the Cleveland game, and at some point in time, maybe around week 5 or 6 or 7, he has 21 days to come back after they designate him from IR. Sam Darnold will be on the roster. I do expect PJ Walker to be the backup quarterback next Sunday against the Cleveland Browns. After that, I have no idea. The Carolina Panthers are not going to only have 2 quarterbacks on their active. They'll have maybe only 2 on the active roster, but they're not going to only have 2 quarterbacks of the 69 players, 53 on an active roster and a 16 on the practice squad. They're going to add another quarterback. Will that be someone like Cam who you like to bring up? Or maybe Mason Rudolph, who is a Rock Hill native and the Panthers could trade for? Don't necessarily think that should be the case. They will add somebody. They have to add somebody. I do not expect that person to stick around for the longevity of the season and be here when Sam Darnold comes back later on. Running backs. I think the Carolina Panthers are going to take 3 running backs. So Christian McCaffrey, Dante Foreman, and Chuba Hubbard will be the 3. If Christian McCaffrey gets injured at any point in time of the season, the Carolina Panthers will need to add a pass-catching back. We saw on Friday, Chuba Hubbard has bricks for hands. He needs it to jugs machine. I'm sure he has. It ain't working. Dante Foreman is not going to be asked to be a pass-catching back, although he did have a really good touchdown catch when the ball was thrown behind him from Baker Mayfield on Friday night. That is not why the Carolina Panthers brought him in. They brought him in for short yardage situations, and he well, showed up at least in that situation and not the play before. That's why he's on this roster. Fingers crossed, Christian McCaffrey will stay healthy. But those are the 3 running backs I expect to make this roster. Now, wide receivers. I saw Joe Person from The Athletic. I saw who he was projecting to make the roster at wide receiver. And there's one player who was not on the roster, and I don't think that's going to be the case, especially after listening to Matt Rule speak on Monday after practice. These are the 6 guys. Carolina Panthers, I think, are only going to take 6. These are the 6 guys I expect to make the roster at wide receiver. DJ Moore, obviously. Robbie Anderson, obviously. Andre Roberts will be on there. The Panthers brought in the 34-year-old All-Pro to be a kick returner. I was wondering to myself whether Roberts might not make the roster because of a guy like Shi Smith. Probably a dumb conversation. The Panthers not bring him in, and he has, I think, history with Chris Tabor, the new special teams coordinator. They did not bring him in to cut him, so he will be on the roster. Terrace Marshall, Joe Person does not believe will be on the roster. He'll be on the roster. The 2nd-round pick of a year ago. There's the talks of Denzel Mims, who has not really produced in his 2 years in the NFL, and Terrace Marshall's been injured. He's got to stay healthy. The hope is that will be the case. They had him rated as a 1st-round pick a year ago, and they got him to the 2nd round. Doesn't make any sense to me after a year and in a banged-up training camp in preseason to move off of Terrace Marshall. So he'll be on the roster as well. Rashard Higgins, Hollywood Higgins, he's earned his way on the roster, spent time in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield. He's looked really good. And then the final player, Shi Smith, who has had an outstanding training camp in preseason, right now should be wide receiver 3 on this team. Shi Smith will be the 6th and final wide receiver. Brandon Zylstra, who's been a special teams ace the last couple of years, not on the roster. Shi Smith should be one of the kick returners along with Chuba Hubbard this upcoming season and provides more in the pass catching department than Brandon Zylstra has over the last couple seasons. The hope, though, I'm sure will be that Brandon Zylstra can be stowed away on the practice squad. Tight ends. Will they have any sort of impact on the roster this upcoming season? We will see. I do think the Carolina Panthers are going to keep 4 and one of those tight ends, like Gio Ritchie will be one of those players who will play fullback and tight end. He certainly showed during the preseason that he can be relied upon to a certain extent as a pass-catching tight end. One of the big questions that we've had about this offense and that position group in particular over the course of the preseason and training camp. So Gio Ritchie, who will play fullback and tight end again this year. Ian Thomas has been injured. Haven't seen a ton of him. He'll be on the roster. The Carolina Panthers did not pay him all that money to then turn around and to cut him. Tommy Trimble, 2nd round or 3rd round pick out of Notre Dame from a year ago. He'll also be on the roster. And then Stephon Sullivan, from people I've talked to, and this is a lot of this stuff. I had a conversation with someone last week who's close to the team, and they gave me a little nuggets on what they think is going to happen with the roster. From what I've been told, the Panthers really like Stephon Sullivan. Colin Thompson, someone who's been on the roster the last couple of seasons, a former Baylor guy. He is likely going to end up on the practice squad. And from my understanding, Colin Thompson, if he was like, hey, we're going to stay on the practice squad, he's like, okay, great. Happy about that. So Stephon Sullivan should be the 4th tight end for the Carolina Panthers, which now brings us up to, 16 players. So 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 6 is 12, plus 4 is 16. All right, offensive line. They kept 9 last year. I expect them to keep 9 again. And if you've been listening to the show, you know exactly the 9 I think they're going to take. And it's basically going to go left to right on the offensive line as far as the starters. Ike Ekwonu will be on the roster, of course, drafted 6th overall. They're not going to cut him. Brady Christensen should also be the starting left guard, will be on the roster. Pat Elflein, currently the starting center. Bradley Bozeman, though, did come back on Monday and talk to the media saying that he is ready to go week 1. We'll see whether he gets to start or will be Elflein, who's been healthy over the last couple of weeks. I expect it probably be to Elflein just based off of he's been available. But Bradley Bozeman as well will be on the roster. So there's 4. Austin Corbett at right guard. He'll also be on the roster. And, of course, Taylor Moton at right tackle. Then the backup swing tackle will be Cam Irving. Good to have depth like Cam Irving, who has been a starter in Cleveland, in Kansas City, and Dallas, and, of course, here in Carolina. Not very good. Former first-rounder out of Florida State, but has experience. So he will be the swing tackle this upcoming season. Michael Jordan, a player the Panthers picked up on the waiver wire a year ago after being cut from Cincinnati. He will once again be back on the roster. And in the 9th and final spot will go to Cade Mays, a 6th-round pick out of Tennessee. It will not go to Deontay Brown, who's still, according to people I've talked to, is struggling with his weight issues, and that is something that is a concern for the organization, and the hope is he'll be a practice squad guy. And then Dennis Daly, the former 5th rounder out of South Carolina. His time as a Carolina Panther will come to an end. So the Panthers are going to take 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 6 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and 9 offensive linemen. That brings us up to 25 players, 28 more to go on the initial 53-man roster for the Carolina Panthers. We'll get into that on the defensive side of the ball here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The college football season is back, and so is the NFL, which means, y'all, it's time for fantasy sports. And I know y'all love fantasy sports, and my favorite place to go is PrizePicks. So how does PrizePicks work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go with a score that's more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money of any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. PrizePicks offers projections of all the sports that you watch and really all the sports out there. That includes the NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis. You're getting the point here. MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and even more. All those sports. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states. And for Canadian listeners, you can also get it up there in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, we took a look at the offense. Now let's take a look at the defense. 25 players down, 28 more to add to this initial 53-man roster. And let's start off with the defensive line. The defensive line is one of those position groups, from what I've been told, that some of the guys who are going to make the roster will not be there on Thursday or Friday, maybe Monday, whenever the Carolina Panthers are able to see who is on the waiver wire, because they want to add at least 2 more players, from what I've been told, to that position group. Look at it. Brian Burns, you're confident about his ability to rush out the edge. But opposite of him, who's going to get the job done? Who is going to strike fear in the hearts of offensive coordinators and game planners and play callers in the NFL this year? I don't think anyone opposite of Brian Burns is going to do that. Yes, you're going to have the combination of Marquise Haynes and Frankie Louvu and some of these other players, but is that going to make that OC game plan for them, or is all the attention going to be on Brian Burns' side? They have to find someone or a combination of players that can take away from that happening this upcoming season. So here is who I think the 9 will be. Brian Burns, Matt Ioannidis, the free agent who came over from Washington, of course, played at Temple for Matt Rule and Phil Snow. Derek Brown, the former 7th overall pick in 2020 out of Auburn. Big things expected out of him this year. Had a really good game on Friday night before going out with that oblique injury, which again was precautionary. Had it been the regular season, he would have stayed in. Etor Gross-Matos, also in that 2020 draft out of the 2nd round out of Penn State, has an opportunity to be started this year after the release of Morgan Fox, who I don't think has even signed anywhere else. Not Austin Corbett. What am I looking at? Marquise Haynes. Got my notes in front of me, kind of looked too high. Marquise Haynes, who had that scary knee injury, turned out to not be anything at all. It was day-to-day. He'll be on the roster again, and their expectation for him to step up into that pass rushing role again this season. Davion Nixon had a knee injury last year. He's back healthy. Let's see what we can get out of him from the interior this upcoming season. And Amari Barno as a speed rusher off the edge, 5th rounder out of Virginia Tech. He will also make the initial 53-man roster. And now there's 2 more left. Those 7, no concern at all whether they'll be on the roster this upcoming season. These 2, though, might make it on Tuesday by 4 p.m. But after that, depending on who's on the waiver wire, they could be gone. Those 2 players are Bravion Roy, who was drafted out of Baylor, been a backup nose tackle the last couple of years, run stuffer. Panthers haven't really been great against the run anyway, so I don't know how good of a job he's really done at that. And the whole unit, anyways, hasn't done a great job. But Bravion Roy, I think, will be on the roster. Then the final pick, Marquan McCall. McCall's played really good in the preseason. That's a dude, when I'm watching that game on Friday, he's blowing up some plays. He's gotten into the backfield, and he has earned his spot on the roster. The problem is they're going to probably find someone else to replace him with and put him on the practice squad, but he certainly has earned a spot on the 69 for the Carolina Panthers. He'll be on the initial 53, in my opinion, and after that, he'll get cut, waiver wire. Hopefully they can bring him back, stash him on the practice squad. Daryl Johnson is a name who did not make it. The Panthers traded from a year ago from Buffalo to be a special teams guy. Not nearly enough. Hasn't had much of an impact at all. And then Phil Hoskins, a 7th-round pick out of Kentucky a year ago. He will not be on this roster. Frank Herron also not going to be on the roster. So that is a 9 as far as the defensive line. Linebackers. I had a thought that maybe there would only be 5 of these guys. But after having a conversation, there are going to be more. Shaq Thompson, of course. Frankie Louvu is going to step into a starting role. And then Damian Wilson will be the starting middle linebacker. After that, Corey Littleton, of course. Brandon Smith. Very easy. I thought that was going to be the only 5. It's important to understand that some of these guys got to play special teams. Like Brandon Smith's going to play special teams. I'm sure Littleton will play special teams. Louvu will likely, again, play special teams. Shaq ain't going to play special teams. Maybe Wilson does. I don't know. Not everyone's going to play special teams. It's going to be the younger guys. Also going to be some of those fringe of the roster guys. Julian Stanford, great first name, by the way, will be on the roster once again. He will be there for special teams purposes. So that's 6 linebackers. That's 9 defensive linemen. So 15 plus 25. We're up to 40, 13 more spots to go. And 3 of them are going to special teams. So that means the Carolina Panthers, I believe, are going to take 10 players in the secondary this upcoming season. Only took 9 a year ago. Going to have 10 this upcoming year. Starting off at corner, Dante Jackson, J.C. Horn, C.J. Henderson, those are your top 3 when all of them are healthy. When they're all healthy, J.C. Horn will move into the slot. Those are your top 3 guys. After that, Keith Taylor has been a little injured, but he's someone that this team likes as a depth piece, had to step up and start a couple games at the end of last season when Dante was injured, J.C. was injured, and then Stephon Gilmore was also out. The final... And let me hold it. Let's add some sort of suspense to this. Let's go to safety now. Jeremy Chin, Xavier Woods, Sean Chandler. Now, 3 more spots left. This one surprised me, and I thought he was going to make the roster, but I was told that Justin Burris, who started the last couple seasons at free safety, unlikely to make the roster. Sean Chandler, one of those fringe guys. But this person told me that he thinks that Sean will make it. And Sean's probably the last guy to make it on this roster, at least at the safety position. Miles Hartsfield, who's played safety and played nickel, will once again be on the roster for the Carolina Panthers. So there's 8 right there. Final 2, both of them on the roster for special teams purposes. Sam Franklin and Stan Thomas Oliver. Kalen Barnes, 7th-round pick, coming in. Is not going to make it over STO, who's been a special team stalwart during his first 2 seasons with the Carolina Panthers. So he makes a roster over Kalen Barnes. Those are your 10 in the secondary. Dante Jackson, J.C. Horn, C.J. Henderson, Keith Taylor, Stan Thomas Oliver, Jeremy Chin, Xavier Woods, Sean Chandler, Miles Hartsfield, and Sam Franklin. Those should be, at least my opinion, I think will be the 10 in the secondary for the Carolina Panthers once they officially get the roster cut down on Tuesday at 4 p.m. So 50 players down, 3 more to go, and, well, this is probably pretty easy. Who's going to be on the roster. But there's a situation with the kicker that I want to update you on, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You can end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Nah, wrong. The truth is your reaction time slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high, guys. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different, drive high, get a DUI. Okay, so 25 on offense, 25 on defense. Going back again over the totals, 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 6 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen, 9 defensive linemen, 6 linebackers, and 10 players in the secondary, which leads us to special teams. Of course, Johnny Hecker, 4-time All-Pro, been a part of the NFL All-Decade team. He's on the roster, folks. Surprise, surprise, surprise. He signed like a 4-year deal. He's not going anywhere. So he's on the roster as a Panthers punter. And J.J. Jansen, who a couple weeks ago solidified his spot by beating out Thomas Fletcher, the 6th-round pick last season, the Panthers took him over Trey Smith. That's what Panther fans said, even though Deontay Brown, who's not going to make the roster, is probably the guy that they really picked over Trey Smith in last season's draft. So those two guys get us to 52. Now, 53 is going to be for the kicker. And I'm not sure how they're going to go about it. As we know, Zane Gonzalez suffered a groin injury on Friday night, the second year in a row where he's injured himself when warming up, either on the sidelines or on the field. Had the quad injury a year ago down in Buffalo. I guess up in Buffalo technically. When it was very cold, slipped on a freezing field, that he got injured, and the only guy they had to kick off was Brandon Zylstra because Lachlan Edwards, who basically lost any opportunity to be the punter moving forward, is from like Australia, where I guess they don't know how to do place kicking and that kind of stuff. So it ended up being Brandon Zylstra that day. Zane Gonzalez gets injured Friday night. Was it the field turf? Was it the weather? I don't really know what happened. Just bad luck. And from everything that Matt Rule said to the media on Saturday when updating them on Sam Darnold and Zane Gonzalez's injury, Sam, he's going to come back. Zane, it does not feel like he's going to come back. Talk about it's going to be long-term. So he will, at the very least, be placed on IR. The Panthers have not made any moves as of this recording at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. And they said they wouldn't make any moves on Monday. Everyone was out there for practice, giving guys off Tuesday. That's when they're going to make moves. With Zane, I just think the smartest thing for the Carolina Panthers to do is to keep him on, unless they find out from the specialist who is apparently seeing about his groin. Unless they find out then that he's definitely done, just keep him on the roster and take your time working out kickers, see what's out there on the waiver wire, who's available, and then come to the decision by Monday. There is really no reason to rush this. They play next Sunday. They have to practice the rest of the week. They need to get somebody in there, but it's not that pressing of a need at this point in time. And Joe Person from The Athletic reported that the Panthers conducted workouts on Monday with kickers Eddie Pinheiro and Brian Johnson, both of whom have a relationship with special teams coordinator Chris Tabor, who Matt Rule said on Saturday would be instrumental in the decision-making of who they select as a kicker. So expect it to likely be one of those guys. Maybe there's someone else out there who they think fits. I brought up on Friday Night Show that I thought that Nick Skiba from Wake Forest could make a lot of sense, considering a local guy. I'm sure they've seen enough of him, and he made a ton of kicks at Wake. Does he have the biggest leg? Maybe not, but accuracy was what matters the most. And the Carolina Panthers are in a situation where I really thought special teams was going to improve, and overall it should. But the kicker, that's where you score a lot of points, folks. And you get a bad kicker, you're talking about maybe a missed field goal, missed extra point. That's 4 points off the board. And 4 points in a league where every game, for the most part, comes down to one possession is not something that you want to lose week in and week out. So it's vitally important. Now, the Carolina Panthers were in this position last year with a conversation with Joey Sly, who was clearly going to get cut. They did cut him after that Friday night game against Pittsburgh in the dress rehearsal, but Ryan Santoso took the job. But there was a whole trade clause, though, where the Panthers would not owe the Giants anything if Santoso was not on the roster for week 2. And we saw Santoso was on the roster week 2, wasn't a very good kicker, and he's been several different places since then, and he's, of course, all been cut from those locations. He's just not a starting kicker in the NFL. They were able to find Zane Gonzalez with a practice squad in Detroit, and it's amazing to find him in that scrap heap where the Lions are terrible. And if you can't make the roster for the Lions at 53, then what's your deal? But Zane Gonzalez came in here. He solidified the position, was really good. Unfortunately, got injured last season. Unfortunately, he's got injured so far this year. So at this point in time, I don't know what they're going to do. It looks like Pinheiro or Brian Johnson are going to be the guys. Brian Johnson, yet another mediocre Virginia Tech kicker, made all his kicks last year as far as field goals, missed 4 extra points. That's the kind of stuff that drives me insane. Pinheiro, been okay. Big leg. Not that accurate. It's just hard to find a consistent kicker. And unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers look like they're going to be in that merry-go-round of just bad kickers once again this season. And I hate that for a team that I've been bullish about all season long and felt good about the kicking situation. And we've seen, we had John Casey for a while here. Even Graham Gano was a good kicker. And I know we like to do the revisionist history of, the Butker thing. I mean, Butker's been better off going to KC anyway. He has a Super Bowl ring. Was never going to get one of those here during the last couple of seasons. Maybe we'll see what happens moving forward. But Graham Gano beat him out. Then Graham was a Pro Bowler that season. And Graham's been a really good kicker. Made a ton of money in New York. He missed some kicks that were timely, and the reason why Panther fans are upset. But all in all, he was a good kicker. There just are not a ton of good kickers available. And we got Zane Gonzalez last year on an up year because he's gone up and down in his career, and he looked really good again throughout the preseason. So I wasn't guessing that Zane Gonzalez is going to have a bad year this season. I was, a little skeptical. Naturally, I am, just seeing whether he could follow up, and I felt like he would. But it looks like we're not getting the opportunity to see if he'll do that. So the Carolina Panthers, again, brought in Eddie Pinheiro, Brian Johnson, both guys with history with special teams coordinator Chris Tabor. And we'll see how that goes. So that is the 53-man roster for your Carolina Panthers. The initial 53-man roster as I see it. Again, 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. That's when the Carolina Panthers will get from 80 to 53, and we'll find out what they do afterwards. The players that will end up on the practice squad, plenty of them that you've seen. I'm guessing guys like CJ Saunders will be on the practice squad once again, and the hope is any of the guys like Tay Hayes, talk about whether he can make the roster. I've been told he's going to be a practice squad guy, so hopefully he can clear waivers and be on the practice squad for the Carolina Panthers. I'm sure the Panthers have looked at other players throughout the preseason who they think can help them, and I'm thinking a quarterback is going to have to be one of those as well whenever they're able to get rid of Sam Darnold, at least when they put him on IR for the time being. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, guys, make sure to watch the show Monday through Friday. Check us out over on YouTube, rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions either at me or DM me at Julian Council to participate in this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag on Locked On Panthers. In the meantime, stay safe, be happy, be whole, and, maybe say some encouraging words to the guys that get cut. And as always, keep pounding. I will talk to y'all on Wednesday.